Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian, I'm Ian the Reader, and today I have yet another book review for you. I'm sorry, I've just been reading so many good books and I have to talk to you about them because that's my job. I mean, it's not my job, but if I could get paid to do this, I totally would. Anyway, today I'm here to talk to you about an excellent thriller that I just finished reading last week called In the Hills Above the Gristmill by Kalvin Ellis. This is another book that I read for the Indie Accords Readathon. This is a self-published book, and that is super impressive because as I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, this just feels like a traditionally published thriller that like I might have gotten from Book of the Month or something like that, because this book feels super approachable. This book is extremely polished and well written, and I think that this is a thriller that you're going to want to have on your radar if you love mystery thrillers whatsoever. I did just also want to say thank you so much to Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative for posting such a glowing review of this book on her YouTube and on Goodreads. I saw those and it hyped me up to read it, and I am so glad that I did decide to pick this up for the Indie Accords. Go check out her review down below if you want some more gushy thoughts about this book, because she did a great job explaining all of her thoughts and feelings and emotions on it in that video. So let me tell you what this book is about. In this book, we follow Paisley Mott, who is a supernatural investigator who has a web series that is sort of on the rise. I mean, she has like a bit of a following, definitely more than I do, so I mean, you know, whatever. But she's not like quite reached the stardom that she wants for herself. At the start of this novel, Paisley is waiting for that big break, and it comes sort of in the form of a man named Hollis, who is a preacher in this small remote town that not a lot of people have heard of. He contacts her because women in the town have been kidnapped and found murdered and mutilated in the woods multiple times, and he believes that a Sasquatch or Bigfoot is the one responsible for these killings. So Paisley sets off in a plane all the way to this small town where she discovers that there is a lot more going on than meets the eye. There's a huge and dark backstory to this town, and the further she gets involved in it, the more dangerous things become. So let's talk about some of the things that I loved about this book. So first, I love small town books, like books that are set in like smaller communities where a lot of people know each other and there are all these existing relationships going on before the book has even started. That is something that I just love to read. I think it is such a satisfying experience to like have a main character who's entering into that environment where they're discovering these relationships and the things that have been going on behind the scenes as you discover it. I think that is just a super enjoyable thing, and I think it makes it very immersive, just having all of this history going on behind the scenes before the book even started. There's a lot that has happened and you are left to catch up. That's just something that I really enjoy in books, and to have that in a mystery or thriller book is always even more satisfying because it adds to like the list of suspects, it adds to the motivations and the backstories and the history and why things are going on. It just really has a really fun aspect to add to a mystery thriller, and that was something that was exceptionally well done in this book. The town is alive in this, not like actually alive, but like it breathes, you know? This feels like a real town with real history, with real people in it, and that was something that I think Kalvin Ellis did exceptionally well. He truly did bring that to life on the page, and that was something I truly appreciated about my reading experience here. Then we have the thrills itself. There are a lot of moments in this that were wild. Like, you know, with thrillers, I think for the most part, you kind of understand like the projection of where the story is going. I mean, with a lot of stories, there's a typical plot arc, right? But this book really kind of threw that out the window at moments. There were some moments in this book that blew my mind, broke my heart, and really just impressed me that like the author went that far, you know? Because I think a lot of thriller authors kind of go crazy and like make things dark or whatever, but in a way that I don't necessarily think is original. And in this book, I think that there was like the main thing going on, but he sets up these other things that happen throughout the story that have huge payoffs and huge moments as well, that I was just like on the edge of my seat as things were happening. I was just like, oh my gosh, no. And that happened like multiple times in this book, and I love that in mystery books where they just really have you like holding your breath, you know, that like typical thing where it's like, oh, you let out a breath you didn't even know you're holding. That happened to me a few times when I was reading this, and I appreciated that a lot. And like I said before, the writing here is so well polished. It is so like flawless in a lot of ways. I mean, I listened to this on audio, and the audiobook production was really great as well, but everything just flowed perfectly. Like, this is a self-pub book. He did all the stuff for this, and I'm sure he had help with like editors or beta readers or whatever, but this is an impressive debut novel. The fact that this is a self-pub debut and it felt just like, I mean, he felt like a pro. He really did. And I really am impressed by this book, and I cannot wait to see what Kalvin Ellis does next. And that's something I did want to mention. This is listed on Goodreads as the first in a series, and I have been like creeping on him on Instagram. I think I messaged him once, or maybe I didn't, but I've been following him on Instagram, and I know that he has started work on the second book, but I don't know when it's happening. So I would really like the second book, man. If you're watching this, come on. And this definitely does feel like the first book of a series, because you've got this character who has, like, you know, a career she's trying to get into, and you see some things that happen in the story that definitely will impact her career, but you don't see how it does impact her career very much at all. And so I definitely want to see the payoff of that in a second book, where, okay, where's Paisley at as the second book is beginning? And in addition to that, there are some things that go on in her backstory involving her mother and the death of her mother that are hinted at in this book, but they aren't fully fleshed out. We don't get a lot of resolution from those things, so I definitely want to see where Kalvin Ellis decides to take that storyline in the second book. So now let's go ahead and talk about a few things that I wasn't quite so hot on with this book. So the first of those is that some of the character interactions I felt like were not quite realistic. For the most part, they were. There were only a few relationships that the main character had with some people that she met in the town that I was like, would you really do that? Or would you really act that way? Or would you act this way? And maybe that's just my interpretation of it, so I won't necessarily deduct a lot of points for that. But some of the characters, I was just a little bit frustrated by the things that they did, and I was like, that's not what a real person necessarily would have done. Now, that didn't happen often, and I wouldn't say that it was like a recurring theme, but there were definitely a few moments where I was like, what are you doing, you dummy? And I would have just done it differently. And then the other thing I did want to bring up, and this kind of goes with any thriller, because you're going to have a lot of plot twists, you're going to have a lot of misdirections and things like that. There were a few different big reveals in this story, and one that was very pivotal to the story's conclusion I saw coming a mile away. That's just me personally. I don't necessarily know that that will happen with everyone, and in some reviews that I've read that did not happen, but I was like, okay, this is what's going on here, and I was right. But that's just me. I don't think that it will necessarily impact your enjoyment of it. I just wanted to say that that is my personal interpretation of the events of this book and my experience with them, so wanted to put that out there. I also just want to say that I think Paisley is a great character. She has a lot of history, she has a lot of things that she struggles with internally, but she also has these motivations of, you know, wanting to stay focused, wanting to be somebody who has a career that she is proud of, and she definitely commits to that throughout her time. Like, she's in some dangerous situations, and she busts out her camera and is like vlogging it, and I'm like, okay, you're crazy, but like, I'm proud of you, I guess. She was just a really well-rounded and well-written character, and I really enjoyed her story so far, and I cannot wait to read more of it when the second book does come out. So to wrap up my thoughts on this, I loved my time with this book. It was thrilling, it was mysterious, it had a great setting, a great background, and a great history involved with that as well. I think this was a super well-crafted debut novel, and I cannot wait to see what Kalvin Ellis comes out with next. I will be ready to read it as soon as it is announced. If you're like me, you love a mystery thriller that is going to keep you on the edge of your seat, that dares to go places that other books would not go, and this is definitely one of those books. If you're looking for a book to thrill you and have you on the edge of your seat, you're not going to want to miss this. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into my reading report card for In the Hills Above the Gristmill.
Alright, so for In the Hills Above the Gristmill, I'm giving this a 21 out of 25 for personal enjoyment. I always love a good mystery thriller novel, and this was definitely one of those. The plot, I'm giving a 13 out of 15. I really do think that the plot was well handled. There were a lot of great mysteries that were introduced and character elements that were part of the plot as well. That being said, I do wish that there had been a little bit more of a delivery on the backstory of our main character. As far as pacing goes, this book did not let up from start to finish. I found it to be absolutely thrilling and held my attention the whole time, so I'm giving it a 15 out of 15. This gets a 12 out of 15 for the characters. Like I said, I would have wished to get a little bit more on the backstory of Paisley, and on top of that, there were a couple characters and the interactions between the characters that I just didn't think were very believable, but overall, I did really enjoy our cast of characters. And then, like I said before, I do always love a small town setting, and this was very immersive as a result. I think that the small town was very well handled. It felt very deep and very well fleshed out, and I really did appreciate that, so it gets a 14 out of 15. And then for prose and themes, I am giving this a 13 out of 15. Like I said, I think the prose was very well polished and very smooth. There were not a lot of moments that I think were bumpy in any way. It just really was a great experience overall. As far as themes go, it definitely touched on a few things that I think are very important, including racism and bigotry in a small town, as well as the appearance that people put on social media and broadcast versus the reality that actually exists in their lives. But I wish those themes had been touched on a little bit more heavily rather than just being, hinted at or kind of in the background. I wish that had been a little bit more central to our characters' journeys in the story. Overall, though, I greatly enjoyed my time with this novel. I thought it was a very compelling mystery book, and I cannot wait to continue. This earns an 88 out of 100 from me, getting it a B+ and 4 stars.
And that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments if you plan on picking this up. I think, like I said, if you love mysteries and you love thrillers, you are not going to want to miss this book because it is edgy of your seat. Such a good time, and it is super underrated. I know you've been reading those mystery thrillers by like Alice Feeney and Ruth Ware and all those people. You should read something that's underrated, and this is it. You're gonna want to tell all your friends about it, and you totally should because it's awesome. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye!